Okay, so I had to make this quick outdoors, but that is the grave of my roommate Travis Alexander. Hopefully, I don't fall on this grass just because of how difficult the terrain can make it for me to walk. Like that. But given that it's over 100 degrees, I've got to get in my car, get the phone into air conditioning so that the camera doesn't shut off on me while recording. Because here in Riverside, California, it's 103 degrees. It's about 149. So I thought I'd and get a quick bite to eat and walk at the Tyler, at the mall. Gosh, I can't say the name of the mall. The Gallery at Tyler, which is just down the freeway from here. But right over there, where you see the blue balloons, that's Travis's grave. Excuse me. And I believe that's his grandmother buried next to him as well. Somebody left a little angel statue on her grave. But I believe yesterday was Travis's birthday. Typically by the time I can get to his grave, I'm usually like a day late for the party, but let's see, Travis is going to be 31 back in 2008, it's 2016 now, and that would have meant he'd be 39 if he were still alive. So I've already told you the story of the night that his body was found and stuff, so I figure since I'm here at the cemetery, I may as well tell the story of my first time visiting his grave in 2008. Because I believe I did talk about the memorial we had for him in Mesa, Arizona at our church building, just because with Travis's family and friends his family being rooted here in Riverside, California, it makes more sense for them to have his actual funeral and burial here, where the family is located. I mean, his sister, she probably still has his job, but his sister, I remember being a deputy for the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. But here, but with Travis being buried here, that meant a lot of his friends who were in Arizona, who had become his family, weren't going to be able to attend. So, our young single adult ward in our church had a memorial for him at our church building, so that way his friends who could not come to the proper funeral and burial would have something to say goodbye to him with, and to have a big event. And I believe I talked about it because Jody was there, his murderer, Jody Arias, who had been tried and convicted for his murder in the first degree. And so we were supposed to go to Disneyland in the summer of 2008, but my dad had to have a surgery, my late father, he had to have a surgery, and so we wound up having to postpone our trip that year, and we wound up taking it in October for Columbus Day weekend. At the time, I was dating a young woman. Well, she was older than me, so whatever. Somebody who was also really good friends with Travis, and she was the reason that I wound up moving in with Travis. I won't get into the whole details of how what came to be or whatever, but at that time I was seeing that this was not the right girl for me, And I mean, can you blame me that my roommate got murdered by a bitter ex? That it kind of made it tougher for me to break up, and then also, we're both in mourning too. So I guess we needed each other for reasons like that. But I was kind of stuck with her for a while until finally in December I finally swung the axe down. Sad thing is, like, once I had the nerve to finally do it, like, I couldn't even call her because I knew she would have her phone off. I mean, that very early morning at, 5 a.m., somebody lent me their phone to call her to let her know about Travis's death. I had to leave a voicemail. So it's like, and I know this is pretty scummy, but given the hour in the morning that it was, I had no choice. I had to, cut ties with this girl, and I had to do it now because I could not stand to be in this relationship anymore. And I was stuck leaving her a message that was not in person or anything like that, just because I knew her phone was going to be off. So I mean, that was a condition I had to deal with. But I was stuck with her on our trip that October, and usually what we do with our Disneyland trips is we'll space out our theme park days. So usually what we try to do is have a day of rest in between our theme park days. Today was our, one of our days of rest, this Friday, the 29th of July. So I drove here from Anaheim, where we're staying, and right now the traffic on the freeway was pretty awful in Corona. I think they're adding toll lanes to I-15 or something. But Corona is always the worst part of the drive on this freeway. But we drove from our hotel, which at the time we were staying in Cyprus, and we drove over here to Riverside to the cemetery. The cemetery is actually on both sides of the street here. Kind of down that way is where the office is located. And not being familiar with the cemetery, I believe she was able to get, my girlfriend at the time was able to get the name of the cemetery from one of Travis's sisters. I don't remember if it was Samantha or Tanisha that she was able to contact. At the time, they were really being cautious about what phone calls they received because, as you couldn't imagine, they were being bombarded by, media and stuff trying to get information about the case from their perspective. And but when we told them who we were, and they had met us at Travis's house briefly and I believe in the memorial, then they knew who we were, and they were comfortable proceeding and letting us know at least where, what cemetery has Travis buried. And they probably just weren't really in a good frame of mind to really tell us where he was at the time, because sometimes too, when a person is buried, they may not always have their headstone or their tombstone ready for installation. It's like that with my dad. Right now we don't have a marker for him yet, but we know about where he's buried in the Mesa Cemetery. And so they probably hadn't, not all the family members have probably even seen Travis's headstone at that point, which is currently kind of obscured by flowers and things. I didn't want to move anything, so that's why I didn't. But I have posted pictures before from the grave with Travis's stone, plainly visible. But anyway, we drove here. We drove to the office so we could figure out a location of where to find Travis. Pretty much what they need to do is tell us of a grave that is easy to find, and then from there you're going to move over so many spaces. I mean, here it's not too difficult. Right now there is a tree right here. It's the first tree you see facing the east. And Travis is what, 2 rows away from that tree, or 5 rows away from the gate back there. Just a few spots in from the dividing wall that divides the sidewalk from the cemetery. So, I mean, I know where I'm going when I'm looking for Travis's grave. But, you know, your first time, you got to go to the office to find a person's grave. And so I was the one who was driving. I put the car in park while Kim went inside to inquire with the office about how to find Travis. So I'm facing the office, or looking at the office, and I see this minivan pull up, and I see this couple, kind of older, getting out, and I'm just kind of watching this minivan with this small family inside, and this young woman steps out with brown hair, and it's kind of I think it was straightened, actually. I think I've seen it with curls and straight, but a young woman, in our age group, steps out of the van, and they go in, and I'm thinking, wait a second, isn't that because this girl looks so familiar? And I'm looking at her from the car, walk into the office with the couple with her, and then I realized, wait a second, that's Mimi. Which, if you know the name Mimi Hall, it's because of the trial. She was one of the witnesses in court for the prosecution to testify of Travis's character and what it was like when they dated, and their relationship, because Travis was really interested in Mimi, and she was the last girl he dated. And in fact, the day after the body was found, he was taking her on a cruise to Mexico, which, Jody didn't like. So, I mean, it was nice for the three of us to come to the grave together, because it just sort of made it easier with, strength in numbers. And, when it comes to trials, of course, you want to try and have a support group for you. It doesn't have to really be a big group of people, but, some good friends would help. And those of us in our young single adult ward at that time had really, we really had to pull together, because, some of us didn't live at home, some of us didn't live with our parents if they lived in the area, and, this person that we were all becoming friends with, this common denominator was suddenly taken out of the equation, and we were all left to deal with it. And so Mimi was actually on a road trip with her parents, and she was actually glad that we were here, that she had some familiar people, some familiar friends to visit Travis's grave for the first time, because Mimi really struggled. I remember there were a few times, in our sacrament meeting after the murder, that she had to leave the chapel, and she was just crying and breaking down emotionally. She was really having a hard time dealing with Travis's death at the time. And luckily, in recent years, she has been able to, meet somebody and to date and to even get married. I believe she's had her first child already. If I'm not mistaken, she had a girl. But, I mean, just for the progress she's been able to make after all of this has happened, that's a big amount of progress, and kudos to Mimi for, overcoming and dealing with everything that we've all had to deal with. I know our bishop had sent her to LDS Family Services for counseling, and she had to go to therapy. So, and believe me, as somebody who does go to therapy, it definitely helps once you kind of get things going, and the therapist is helping you to sort of unlock the things that are bothering you, and to help you talk through it, and to find ways of overcoming it. For example, a distraction like this, recording a video and using Instagram and Twitter and things like that, and because I'm not doing any of this for fame or anything. I mean, I'm just kind of, for the most part, I guess I am doing stuff like this for myself, just to sort of talk things through and to be distracted. But at the same time, I have made some other videos detailing all the things that I've been dealing with, for somebody else's benefit, because I feel like there's somebody who needs to know what's going on with me for their own benefit, because, they're probably dealing with something like this themselves. And just to summarize for you what's going on for me, who is one of Travis's roommates, I've had to deal with PTSD. There have been many times where I've been the one stuck taking the trash out, and it's nighttime by the time the trash can is full, and my other roommate Chris is somebody who would do it, but the ginger a lot of times doesn't do it, and the fat guy only took the trash out once, but those two are the ones who are pigs and make messes and never clean up after themselves. And the fat guy is often beached on the sofa watching cable TV when I come home from work, and a lot of times asleep, snoring quite loudly. I don't know, I think if somebody's gonna be diabetic, it should be him, not me. But anyway, at least this is the 86th Street house that I lived at. Just because I'd have to go around the side of the house. It's dark in the backyard, it's dark on the exterior of the house. Street lamps are only so often, and the empty cul-de-sac next to the house was empty. There was an empty lot across the street. They hadn't built any houses there yet. And it was just a terrifying thing to take the trash out for me. And there have been some nights where something woke me up and I had to keep the lights on for the rest of the night because I didn't know what it was outside the window or whatever. One night, I tried sleeping with the open window at the 86th Street house to see if we can get by without the AC, but no. I heard something outside of my window. I wasn't sure what it was. It could have just been a cat or something. Because it's a single-story house, I had to basically act quickly, turn on the lights, and leave the room. And I got my roommate Chris to just make sure, to close my window and close my blinds so I don't have to see nothing but darkness outside of the room, just so I could sleep the rest of the night. When Chris and I lived at his parents' house, I had the master, and my bed faced the open door of the walk-in closet, and there were a couple times where I had strange nightmares of just a man dressed in black hiding in the closet and coming out. And the only way I was able to see him was because of either some light coming in from the street lamp outside, or maybe lightning flashes or something. I've dealt with stuff like that. I've already been dealing with depression since 2000. So 16 years into it now. I was finally diagnosed as being a diabetic June 15th of 2015. I've been going to therapy not only for PTSD and depression, but also to get over my phobia of needles, because you just can't have a phobia of needles and be a diabetic at the same time. They just don't mix. Which luckily I can now lance myself to check my sugar, but I still need help with taking Novolog and Lantus, and at least switching to the pen has helped. This time last year I did not come to Travis's grave because I just could not see well enough to drive. I had to have my eyelids stitched shut on the outsides, just because of this dry eye condition I was dealing with. I had corneal abrasions and ulcers, and I just couldn't see well enough to drive for a couple of months. I couldn't work. Still can't work now. I worked for 5 months, and now I'm on the leave again, and I'm trying to get disability For my condition, I've been having consistently low blood pressure for a while now, and I'm working at getting my pressure up to between 120 to 130 as per my cardiologist. I don't have heart disease, luckily, which he checked with the ultrasound and with the 24-hour EKG. But trying to get my blood pressure up, because oftentimes it's like in the 80s or even the 90s, sometimes even the 70s. I can take my pressure sitting down and then take it standing up, and it'll drop by 30, as much as 30. I've been praying down there. Surprisingly quiet at the cemetery. And, I began having some vision issues, some blurriness, and pretty much the most recent discovery is that I have an arachnoid brain cyst. No tumor, but an arachnoid brain cyst. I don't really know what all of this means for me, but I'm waiting to hear back from a neurosurgeon to find out if it will require operation, and also if it will even be operable. Just because what happens a lot, because what will happen is I'll get dizzy. I just get this persistent dizziness, this vertigo, and it's just made it so difficult to function. It's worse when I'm on my feet, but it can still hit me while I'm sitting down, but oddly enough, not when I'm driving. You usually have to lie down for it to go away, and I don't know what having this cyst is going to mean for me, but that's the latest thing that I'm dealing with now. And then of course I've been dealing with some irritable bowel syndrome as well, which is probably caused by stress and anxiety, which I'm trying to manage. And my job protection has expired, so when I do finally get to go back to work, I may not be in the same department that I was in, so I may have a new department, new job role, new co-workers. So there's just a lot of things going on for me right now, and but I'm trying to manage things as best as I can. I'm taking this leave in the hopes of making my health situation better. I'm working on I am trying to stay control of my diabetes, and in fact I finally got my A1C down to a reasonable level, as my most recent blood test from July 9th showed my A1C at 6.6. When I started, when I was declared diabetic, my A1C I think was about 12 or 13. It was high, and usually when your A1C is high enough, they just start you on insulin therapy immediately. But with therapy, I've been able to start lancing myself, and with my experience in using Novolog pen prescribed by my endocrinologist, I have been I have liked it much better than the vial and syringe, so I've switched to the pen for my Lantus prescription as well. And so there's a bunch of medications that I'm taking, and the most recent thing from my cardiologist is to start wearing compression socks, and I don't care for how they look or feel. They're very tight on the foot, but I do notice that they keep the swelling down, because your feet do swell naturally. But hey, at least I can affect how they look, because let's face it, if you didn't know any better, if I hadn't hiked up my pants, then you probably wouldn't have really noticed any difference, because it just looks normal. And that's what I'm striving for, is just to be normal at the end of it. So there's Travis's grave over there. I gotta go get a quick bite to eat, walk at the mall, and get back to my family in Anaheim.